All right. Okay. So Jude, formerly of Sugar Wheel Works, you've built that business and since sold it to Breadwinner. What are you doing now?
So over the last year, well, the reason why I sold sugar was because I felt I had reached a point that I was becoming more interested in how businesses run. And I really wanted to see what that looked like to kind of step outside of the sugar world, maybe even the IBD world, and kind of explore that next chapter. And so I've spent the last year kind of doing my own coaching and consulting business, just kind of on the side, thinking of it being like a 3 to 5 year plan, and then trying to help with technical assistance for either small nonprofits, volunteering, just an incredible amount, just to kind of figure out what the problems are and how I might dial into kind of helping people kind of solve their own problems. I've just spent so long in the trenches. I've made so many mistakes, and it would be just an unfortunate thing to not use some of the things that I've learned to help other small businesses. And gosh, and now look, and this is where we're at right now. And it's sort of like the last year has prepared me for this moment and prepared me for being there for other small businesses. So
Cool.
So that's what I'm doing these days.
Yeah. Before we, what were some of the biggest lessons that you took away from running Sugar that you're kind of imparting to the other small businesses you're working with?
You have to decide to be the leader. That it is so easy to victimize yourself in running a small business, especially in an IBD. The margins are thin. There are seemingly so many things up against you, and you have to absolutely every day, whether you feel it or not, decide you're going to make it through. And once you've made that decision, then you begin looking for resources, and you have to step outside of your silo, your own thinking, and start to pull in other ideas. And you really just have to, like, there were so many naysayers like along the way that, how can a small wheel shop survive? And you just have to be so clear as to what your vision is and why you're doing it. And I can attest to the fact that it is not easy to do that every day. But you still have to do it. And you really have to, even when you've made mistakes, you have to own those mistakes, and you have to give yourself that pep talk all over again and get right back to it.
Yeah. You know what, like listening to that, it sounds like an endurance sport. Like
True.
Like running a small business is essentially like Dirty Kansas, but for years on end.
And the one thing, like in the aftermath of running a business, I would hear all the time, like, entrepreneurs are like a special breed, small business owners are a special breed. And I would always think, no, we're not. Like, we're just like everyday people. And now that I've interfaced with different folks, especially folks who haven't run small businesses, I will tell you, entrepreneurs are so much fun to work with. They're all teetering on the edge of craziness in their own way. They're all brilliant in their own way, and they're gritty. They are so fucking gritty. Sorry, I won't use that word again, but they really are.
Demonetized.
There are so many of them, and they, that the thing is they don't realize just how special they are. I certainly didn't. And when I go into a small business and now, like, the owner comes and says hello or something along those lines, I feel so honored, so special. And I just, it's one thing I didn't realize. I just didn't realize the gift that what I was creating was actually giving people in the moment. And I really, especially during this time, really appreciate those small business owners choosing to make it through and showing up, and they absolutely deserve our support right now.
For sure. Looking back at your time at Sugar, and I know, like, it's easy to see the mistakes that you made. Like if you were to do things again, what would you change?
I would, this is like the less sexy parts of it, but I would have better boundaries earlier, better boundaries with both staff and customers a little bit earlier on. I think that as small business owners, we're almost apologetic sometimes, and those good boundaries are helpful on both ends of things. I would do a cash flow analysis much earlier, like year 2, instead of year 3 or 4 or 5. Because when I started to run my cash flow analysis, it really helped me make better decisions, and it helped me create an emergency fund for my business that allowed me to sleep better at night. And then I would compare myself less to other people on the journey. And I would devote more time to thinking about what made my business special and have confidence in what I'm giving in that realm.
Yeah.
Those all sound like good life lessons in general.
So I know a lot of like bicycling based businesses, a lot of people start it from passion, but without a good business background. Did you have a business background before, or was that something that you had to teach yourself along the way?
Well, at the age of 14, a long story short, my parents said that they weren't going to be able to pay for my college. So I had my first business then as a lawn watering service because I couldn't compete with the lawn mowers. My parents had recently moved to the suburbs. And so that was like my first business. It had a jingle and everything. But no, I had to kind of, and then, I actually worked for McDonald's because again, like I was like, I need to save money for college. At 14, you can be a golf caddy, which I also was. I had like 4 jobs that summer. And so I worked at McDonald's and kind of rose through the ranks and became essentially a store trainer within like 5 McDonald's restaurants by the age of 19. And they had even given me some scholarships to go to school. And I learned a lot about manufacturing then because a hamburger is really just a widget, right? And so you learn about like what it takes to motivate folks. That turnover can be a really difficult thing for a business. So I learned a lot of the fundamentals of operations through that job and through kind of the structure that McDonald's had, even though I've still never eaten a Big Mac. But the actual like the ownness of like being responsible for livelihoods, like directly responsible for livelihoods and directly responsible for the cash that flows in and out. And then the responsibility of the product that you're giving to the customer. Those things were not lost on me as a small business owner. And those are the things that kind of kept me up at night. And I didn't realize until about year 4 or 5 that those are things that also other people have dealt with, and that there is structure and ways of dealing with that, and kind of learning how to put your strategy together once you kind of see the background of the numbers.
So it sounds like you had
I forgot what your question was. I just went on like talking.
That was great. Like I didn't know that you had this whole like McDonald's managerial background prior to Sugar, but I think that kind of like informs why your business was so successful.
Yeah, they almost sent me to Ham U.
That's a thing.
It absolutely is a thing. It's more about like food safety and like motivating staff and so forth. But remember, I was like 14 years old, like when I started, like, I was riding my bike every day to work. It was like the closest place to work, like by my parents that would hire someone with a work permit. So that's how I got roped into that.
Right. Cool. So you've sold Sugar, but you're still somewhat involved. Do you still do some wheel building classes, or like what's your level of involvement now?
Yeah, so I actually asked Tony and Ira if I could stay on and do wheel building classes because I really enjoy teaching. So they let me continue to do that. And mostly I serve as, Alex, the point person at Sugar now. He just does such a phenomenal job. But I like to keep those doors open in case there is a question, both on the technical side of things and also just on the customer history side of things. But by and large, like I also try to, keep a healthy distance because it is their business now. And I don't want them to think that they have to run things by me, which I don't get the feeling that that's the case. But I just always want them to know that I'm there if they need me to be. So I'm like an unofficial, like friendly advisor to the business.
Right. Cool. Well, let's talk about you. You mentioned right before we hop on the call, you're doing some exciting stuff with QBP and IBDs. Lots of lots of letters.
Yeah. It's like always alphabet soup, right?
Yeah.
I realized more than anything else how much I miss the outdoor industry. I really like doing the business consulting, and at some point, like I want to be able to find a way of doing both of those things under in the realm of the outdoor industry. There's just a specialness. Sometimes can be frustrating, but it's also a very special industry. And so I've been working with QBP. I pitched the idea to them that, hey, like we can leverage some of the mistakes I've made into like a class. And so I was brought on to help with Service Summit, which, obviously was canceled or moved to, I think, November now. So I'll be doing a brand development and leadership class in November. But then we were talking and we were like, but we have to do something now to help the IBDs. And we are all in this together, and that's taking on a very different meaning. But vendors can't do work without the IBDs, and IBDs can't do work without the vendors. And so we have to find a way to support each other through this. And so we're going to be rolling out some loosely defined programming, making it a space for people to come together, collaborate, to voice what they need, but also to provide some leadership through this time as well, and some encouragement. So I'm working with QBP on that, and I'm just so stoked to be on such an amazing team.
What's the platform going to be? Is it going to be through video conferencing to reach the IBDs? Oh, your coffee has been delivered. That's service.
I know, right? So this is my
good job, Alex.
He's like, oh. He's so, one thing I gotta say is I have a partner that just comes up with all my crazy ideas. I'm so grateful.
Yeah. So in terms of like what you're going to do now with the IBDs, is it going to be kind of digital material for them, or kind of Zoom conference calls to walk them through like how to navigate what's happening now?
Yeah, so on my local level, like just in Portland, I'm doing free business consulting for small businesses to help people put together COVID plans, especially if they don't have processes in place that will make it easier to apply for programs coming through the CARES Act. And kind of more generally through QBP, and I think just to pause, just to reiterate the motivation, I think there are so many of us that recognize we aren't on the front lines of this in terms of being, doctors or nurses and being in the hospitals. But especially for me, I don't want to look back on this time and say I didn't help or I wasn't there to help. And my abilities extend into the economic development, not into no one wants me caring for them. So so this is like my way of feeling useful, I think. And so I think that's the sentiment that is carried forward, is that we want to be useful. This isn't the time to this is a time for all of us to kind of pull together and say, what are the skills that I have that we can leverage that, can help you through this time. And I think that's sort of where QBP is coming from as well.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And there's a lot of programming happening right now. I mean, they're not the only ones that are showing up in this space, but this is going to be special.
Nice. So does it seem like the bike industry, from your perspective, is kind of coming together and people are looking out for each other and trying to make sure that everybody bounces back?
I think it's varied. Oh, sorry, my dog just saw another dog that he likes, and so I'm like, well, don't run away. I think it's varied. I think there's the initial phase of all of this, because we're all going to have to roll with the punches. But the initial phase in all of this is that there's a lot of shock still, and people are still in the space of not full acceptance. And we're still holding on to a life that we previously had, right? And things are different. And it takes a little bit of a time to adapt and to accept where we are and decide to make it through that. So I'm finding that shops are like, they don't realize how special they are, and they are not every shop is making it clear as to how we can support them. And I think that's a really big piece, is that you don't have to come across as the victim and say, oh, help me. But you do have to make it clear, this is what my plan is to make it through. This is where I need your support and your help. And I think that's going to be an important key just in small business support in general. So I think that there's also, for me right now, it's about holding space for small business owners in general and kind of helping them walk through all of the pieces that are coming up for them, because it's not a linear progression. It's not like one day you wake up accepting it. It's like a roller coaster ride to the extreme, and there's like barf bags are needed.
Yeah. Are there any interesting tactics that you're seeing bike shops, employ in these crazy times to still run the business?
Just in terms of like actual strategies, I mean, lots of folks are, I think, again, it's just really varied. I've heard examples of folks that are just super booked right now because I was listening to an interview yesterday with Dr. Fauci. I don't know how to say his name. The leader through all of this, the voice of calm. And he was saying that bike riding is an acceptable activity, that he would like to see everyone locked inside of their houses because his thing is to keep the virus from spreading. But the reality is that there are going to be unintended consequences on the other end of things if we don't preserve mental health for folks as well. And I'm just summarizing it. You should listen to the NPR story about it. But so it seems as though cycling and running and the solo outdoor activities are going to be something that we can come to rely on, and I think are going to be part of our recovery going forward. And so I think shops that are putting out information on how they're taking care of customers during this time are finding that they can at least keep a moderate level of service business going.
Yeah. Yeah, when we were in Tucson, it was when things started to get really hairy, and we saw a couple of the local shops pivot. One was offering online or bicycle drop-off of parts. If a customer called in and needed a part, then within a service radius, they drop things off. We've seen lots of bike shops offer kind of a gift certificate program. And one thing I think is fascinating, a lot of shops, they depend on that walk-in traffic or that in-person traffic and don't necessarily have like an e-commerce solution worked out. But everyone has to kind of, adjust on the fly super quickly.
Yeah. The gift certificates are really interesting to me because I also think that you need to provide like a plan share your plan for getting through this, because it can also be risky for the consumer if they're not sure you're committed to making it through. So I think that needs to be paired with that as well. And one interesting thing is that I was talking to a shop owner that said, I've been thinking about doing some consultations online, because a lot of people are working, on their home projects and charging for it. And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea, because people should be paying for consultation anyway, right? And it's just like we're suddenly valuing, we're finding this, all over, that we're valuing our frontline employees, like in grocery stores and so forth. but maybe now is the time to also value what shop folks actually give. Like you stopping in to talk about your bike project for 25 minutes, that has a value in a shop, right?
For sure.
And yeah, so I'm sorry, like I'm.
Yeah, I've been doing something similar on the YouTube channel. Shameless plug. We have this service called Bike Whisperer. You know, I've had a chance to review over 50 gravel bikes, and I get really nerdy about, you know, okay, how the geometry affects the steering, and I plot it in the spreadsheet. You know, with the idea that I get to sample all these, and if someone's interested, I can kind of direct them into, you know, the right bike for them, depending on how they want it to feel. So I've been doing that for the last 2 years. And it's
been that long?
Maybe about a year and a half. And I actually have 2 booked for next week. So it's basically like an hour of just, you know, they tell me what their wants and needs are. I do the screen share with a geometry chart, or, you know, talk about different bike brands that they're interested in, and try to, you know, provide that as a virtual service. So.
Yeah.
Do you have any plan to do that for wheel building, like virtual wheel building class?
You know, I'm not sure. No, I mean, there's no plans for me personally coming up with that. I'm not in the monetary side. I'm not in the wheel business anymore. I'm there to support it. I love it. Like, it's like where my mind goes to when I love it even more now. Like, obviously I love it even more now. I really value all of the friends and customers and folks that have supported Sugar, and it's just like it's a whole new level of appreciation for that. But I'm thinking about, you know, my next chapter and what that looks like, and how hard it is actually to find that perfect fitting job, how hard it is to leverage skills that you had as running a small business into sort of the next chapter. But I'm slowly plugging away at it, and you know,
cool.
Optimistically looking ahead.
Nice. Well, I think I'm going to open up the questions to you folks on the Zoom call. You can either, I'm going to change this to gallery view. You can either wave your hands or raise your hand virtually. There's a fancy raise your hand button if you have questions for Jude. Anyone in the gallery? No? Okay, how about in the chat, YouTube chat? Oh, so I had one. Okay.
We got someone.
All right, we got someone. Take her. All right, Nick, you're on.
Cool. Hey, thanks for having me. Just a quick one. Jude, is there actually a market out there for business consultants to do kind of just outdoor type businesses only? Or at the moment, are you kind of just taking what you can get?
There is definitely a market. So there's, like, in the business consulting world, it gets broken down into 3 ways. You have coaching, advising, and consulting. And the way that I kind of look at that is the coach is there to kind of help you, motivate you, get you to think about the things. Standing with you in the shit and helping you figure out, like, what your next steps might be. And then being like a robust thought partner. An advisor maybe has a little bit more technical skills, and I do some advising. Sorry, my cat just jumped up on my platform here. Okay, cat, I love you, but this is and then there's consulting, which is a little bit more hands-on than all of that. Excuse me for one moment here.
That's what cats are really good at, getting in the way.
No, her name is Super Cat. Oh, I love her. So that's kind of like, and I think the reason why I'm not like robustly saying this is what I'm doing is that, like anything that I do, and I've noticed this is like both a pro and a con, I like to at least feel I'm like a really good expert at it. So even with Sugar and wheel building, it took me years to feel like I was actually worthy of the title of wheel builder. And I noticed myself kind of going through that same process now of just really wanting to be really, really good at it first. And so this wasn't necessarily meant to be like my primary thing, but it was supposed to be this passion thing I worked on over the next 5 years. But given the times that we're in right now, it's just like it isn't a time to try to be perfect at it right now. But I have lots of folks that I'm helping, and lots of folks that I collaborate with as well. So
cool. Yeah, and the word of the year is flexible, right?
yes, absolutely. Yeah,
cool.
Flexible thinking.
I think we've got another question here from Andy and from Bella Studio. So I'm going to unmute Andy here. Okay, Andy, you've got the floor.
Andy.
Hey, Jude, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So my question is, you were kind of in the trenches in the wheel building business, and now you've kind of stepped back and have this wide angle view of the cycling industry. What do you think, if somebody was jumping into the bike business right now, what would the opportunity be? Where would you tell people to go and kind of what to do?
Well, I mean, so I don't know that I would tell them to do the bike industry or to become a part of it. But here's what I think is special about folks that choose to be in the bike industry, which is different than other industries that I've seen. There is such a deep passion and connection as to why you show up. And that why of that piece of like why you're here and why you show up, you can't that's gold. That is absolute gold. And that is such a good place to be building a business from, because it's so much easier to communicate everything that you're doing to your customers. When you're running transactional relationships, right, which is, you're starting anyway, when you're having a transactional relationship, it's a lot harder to get people to support you and to pay a higher price for your services because they see only the cost of the particular item. Where I would recommend and where I think you can tie that passion into solid business is by getting your basic business skills, like your cash flow analysis, and making better decisions from that spot. Because I see a lot of small business owners, in particular in IBDs, that are kind of running off the cuff. They care so much about the technical aspect of their work that they forget that there's two other roles that they really need to fulfill. And that's also being the manager of their shop and also being that small business owner and entrepreneur, the visionary of the shop. And you have to really offer space to all of those roles that you have and not get siloed into one of them. And so that can be the difficult part. So that's the part that I would encourage, is to get technical assistance early on, whether that comes in the form of an advisor or a class or something along those lines, but not to become overwhelmed by that part of it. Because you do make better decisions when you're in balance with all three of those roles.
Well, aside from calling you for help, what are the good resources for that kind of the business side of things? Somebody who's passionate about cycling, that's going to be the easy part. But the business part, picking that up, where do you find those resources? Where do you even start with learning about that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So every state is a little bit different. In Oregon, there are plenty of nonprofits that do technical assistance. And just like anything, you have to interview the person and you have to have some kind of a connection to the organization in a way that just because it's free or just because it's what's the word I'm looking for? Just because the state is providing it doesn't mean that it's always good. I had to go through a number of small business advisors when I had my business that just didn't get the cycling industry, didn't get what I was up against, and would use like general business terms like buy low, sell high. And you're like, no shit. Or I would have people say, you're not charging enough for your services. And I'm like, sure. But when the guy down the street is like, has his shingle out and is selling it for $20 less, like I have to do like an analysis of my market. So I think that what I'd like to see, and I don't know that this exists like in just like for the cycling industry, but there are plenty of people that have an awareness of what the cycling or what the outdoor industry in general. And so having that connection, I think, is really helpful. But there are tons of free services. There's also peer-to-peer coaching that you can, being matched with like an older business owner or someone that's been a more mature business. Sometimes that's like a solid way to go. And I think that's one aspect of it, but you as the business owner have to be committed to it. Like it's not easy. You can get overwhelmed, and that's where a good coach can come in and kind of help you break that down. Because, you know, ideally you'd love to have a cash flow dashboard set up, but you're not going to accomplish that in one sitting. And that's going to seem very overwhelming. So you need to be able to break it down into measured steps in order to be able to, over the next 6 months, have that dashboard set up and be able to make better decisions based on the information that you're putting in, maybe in the next year. So it's really about taking the big thing and breaking it down into smaller pieces.
Great, thank
Did
you.
I answer that? I just go off on tangents sometimes.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So if do chambers of commerce, are they typically good resources for that kind of information, Jude, or like what other
They
kind
can
of
be.
local government type things is there?
The SBA is a good place to start.
Okay, SBA.
Yeah, the SBA is a good place to start. QBP service summits in November is also going to be a really good place to start, a really foundational place. That's also a good place to do some networking and meet some people, find some people that you connect with that might be able to take you on as a client as well.
Do you know if they have any contingency plans to make the service summit digital in case things are still how they are?
That's a good question.
Because hopefully everything, you know, will be back to normal or something normalish by then, but
I hope it's not back to normal. I hope that, I mean, I hope our new normal looks different. I hope that we do appreciate people a lot more. We appreciate our communities a lot more. Yeah, but I know what you're saying. I understand the sentiment. I hope that we will be able to see each other in person. I'm like already like, I'm going to be so sore after hugging people that first week we're about to hug people. Oh my God. Like Alex is like so tired of me hugging him. Like
he's your hug proxy. Any other questions in the Zoom chat before I go to the YouTube chat? Just you can raise your hand visually or okay, Michael Mann. Let's see. Unmute. Okay, Michael, you've got the floor.
Awesome, thank you. Hey, Jude.
Hey, Michael.
Hi, how are you? Good to see the best is still alive.
I know, right? I didn't know if anyone would catch that or not.
Yeah. Well, I have two questions, and the first one's super fast. One, what's your current recommendation for spoke prep? I've got a wheels I'm gonna be building in real quick. But my second question has to do with kids and bikes, which there's not going to be any bike industry if we don't have kids on bikes. And I know that's a passion of yours. You came out and did a awesome touring workshop with my kids. What are you seeing? What are you thinking? What can you say about that?
Spoke prep. Boiled linseed oil is still a really solid way to go. It's super, I think hardware stores are still open. You can buy a lifetime supply at your hardware store. Just be aware of the fact that it is flammable. So you want to make sure that you dispose of the rags into a metal container. I still use Loctite 222. After you dip the spokes in isopropyl alcohol, Loctite 222 is a great semi-permanent curing agent. You can use almost anything works. I prefer something that you can put on during the course of the build, because something that acts as a lubricant while you're building and then sets afterwards. And that's basically, boiled linseed oil is nature's Loctite. And the reason why a lot of shops, or why we didn't use it when I was running the shop, was you can develop an allergic reaction to it if you're using it on a daily basis. There it is, Andy. And I love it. You can, so you can develop an allergic reaction to it, and it is messy to clean up. And when you're working in a production environment, you want to cut out those things that take up a lot of time. And so, but in an at-home environment, an extra 10 minutes is no big deal. Oh, and the next question, kids. Yeah. So the whole kid thing, I am seeing so many more parents riding with their kids. And even my neighbors that don't typically ride bikes are doing weekend bike rides. And I think that's like providing quite a bit of sanity. I think that that's a little bit out of my realm in terms of me working directly with kids. I do support a lot of organizations that work with children. And I would defer to the leadership of the CCC. I know the Street Trust is still working here on a local basis, and our co-ops. And then I think that this is also an opportunity for shops to show some leadership as well. There's going to be, a lot of opportunity for family, social distancing, family riding. I know Pedalpalooza is pivoting some of their riding in the month of June. And I know that the Bike More Challenge here locally is going to look a little different. And that's kind of going to be the new normal. But
yeah.
So I have not provided you any more information on that.
No.
Except that I hear you, and I am excited that that more and more people are going. I haven't seen this many joggers out. Like, where did they all
For sure, everyone's turned into a runner.
Yeah. So
cool. Any other questions in the Zoom chat? You can raise your hand in real life or use the little virtual blue hand now. Okay, going to YouTube chat. Let's see, where's everyone watching from? Let us know. Phil Snyder, a longtime commenter, asks, what are your plans for the future? Will you strictly be doing consulting, or do you think you'll start another kind of brick and mortar business like Sugar?
I don't think either of those are true. I'm still trying to figure out where I fit into the landscape of things. I was going to take 3 months off from March 15th, very ironically. I was supposed to be in Moab now, mountain biking. And I was going to give myself 3 months to figure it out. And what I realized about myself is that I operate best when I can do something that I'm passionate about. I think that's just how my personality is. Some folks don't want to work in the vein of their passion, and it's just too stressful for me not to be madly in love with what I do. So I'm excited to somehow use these business skills along with my passion for the outdoor industry together. And I'm not sure what that looks like just yet at this very moment, but I'm open to that. So this is if you guys have job ideas, I'm open to it. But in the meantime, and I think I always want to be doing coaching in the background because I love it, and I get it. I get how the whole entrepreneur shows up in a situation. You can't just look at the technical piece. You can't just look at these things in silos. Like, it's the whole entrepreneur that shows up, and it is hard. It requires a lot of grit, and it requires some tough love sometimes too.
Mm-hmm. Gonna look in the chat really quickly. Do you see something?
So I love that you don't have a path defined yet. So if anybody has suggestions for Jude, fling them into the chat box. You'll get some really great ones.
Yes, I can't wait.
I did notice that there is a question here. What do you think? How do you think local bike shops are going to bounce back? Do you think that they're in a position to be stronger now that we are all recognizing how important it is to get outside and ride and interact with the outside world?
Okay, So optimistically, yes. I think that there is going to be that appreciation, but I still think the bike shop owner needs to be able to set good boundaries and to be able to communicate how, like, what, and to lead, like, what this new world looks like. Yes, we are here for you. This is like how our business is set up. This is how you can support us. This is how we support our community. And I think that is going to be important going forward, because we can't continue operating in the same way. And I know it's really hard to put those boundaries in as a shop owner. I get it. I've been there. And it's really necessary, because what I see is a lot of burnt out shop owners and a lot of folks that feel like they get taken advantage of because they feel like they are held hostage within their shops. And I think that this is an opportunity to kind of reorganize how that happens and to communicate that clearly and with love. Like, we're all in this. Like, we want to see more people riding. Yeah.
So follow-up question. I think that this is a really interesting time for people to get creative. But obviously, if you've been running a business for a long time and you're operating on thin margins and you're tired, it can be really hard to channel some creativity and think outside the box right now. So do you have any tips for people who need to jog some creativity but just don't have it?
Yes. Get outside the box. Like, reach out to other people. Like, this is the beauty of this moment, is none of us have the answers. Like, this is what makes this moment so inventive and so brilliant for entrepreneurs, is that it's an opportunity to rewrite things, and you're not going to rewrite that necessarily on your own. You're going to do that by reaching out to people, creating community, supporting each other, doing cross promotions. I mean, even before you get to that point, you're just opening up the dialogue and the communication, figuring out what resources you need to make it through the next few months, and then figuring out what that longer term strategy looks like. And none of that happens within your own silo. And if you are tired, you need to give yourself a pep talk. You need to pause, slow down a little bit. You don't need to have all the answers tomorrow. We're not sprinting towards the finish line. This is going to be a marathon. And yeah. And, and I want to acknowledge that for a lot of shops, this does feel like you're going back to the first days of running your business, right? Where it's requiring more effort to make your ends meet. And you're kind of in this startup mode, and that can feel, except that there's more at stake right now, because you have a more established business. Maybe you just recently invested in some new equipment that you need to pay off. And I want to acknowledge that this is a really, really hard time, but this is not a time to stay in your silo, and it is not a time to feel sorry for yourself.
Andy, did you still have a question? Yeah, okay. Yeah, you got the, hold on. Unmute. Sorry. Okay. There's a delay.
There we go. Jude, you mentioned boundaries a couple of times, and that how this might be a good opportunity for shop owners to reestablish those boundaries. What are some of the boundaries examples that you're talking about? What are more specific things? And you mentioned it also with sugar early on. What were some of the ones that you found that were a problem?
So candidly speaking, I think that in order to make a shop profitable, right? Especially a small shop, every moment you have to be being productive in that moment, right? And I spent an awful long time giving my time to folks to talk. And that was rewarding, because that made me feel like I was connected to my customers. And I had to put boundaries on how much time I could give someone as well. So what that might look like is you might create moments or opportunities for folks to connect with you. And then so you might have an evening, like a shop party, or you might have something along those lines where you're still available to the community. And then, just being clear about, and I got much better at this, like, especially in the last few years, of saying, I actually have work to do. I'm sorry, I can't have this conversation right now. And I would hold the door open for folks, just to kind of help them, just to kind of put in those cues, but just in such a loving way, because like, you love that they're there, and that, like, that this is important, this is part of building the cycling community. But it's also like I have to, like, my husband, like, needs to see me at some point this evening, and I need to go home, and in order to make that happen, I have to be clear about what my boundaries are and communicating those, right? And so for me, it was like, I felt like sometimes I couldn't control who came in the door and who would sometimes stay for an hour or 2 hours at a time. That's a lot of time to be away from actually producing wheels, managing things, or answering phone calls, or really helping move the business forward. But you do have to create those opportunities for folks, and the ability to connect as well. And I think that,
Yeah,
it looks different in every shop.
I've seen a couple social media posts from a number of bike shops where COVID-19 is forcing them to create those boundaries. So they're very upfront by saying, yes, we love you as a valued customer. We want to help you. We want you to sell you things, but now is not the good time to come by and shoot the breeze for 20 minutes and not buy anything. So I think in some ways, like, COVID-19 could be good in starting that communication that some bike shops need.
And with some folks, I had like a lighting system. Like, I had some friends that, like, would regularly stop by, and I'd be like, red light, I don't have time. Like, yellow lights, like, come on in, I can't talk for a long time. And you see some of that happening now, and it's but I also think, like, that needs to be, like, I think that's something that we as consumers and customers can really connect with and honor within a shop, is that this owner is not, or this person working at the shop is not there for our social enjoyment, and that we can ask them, like, hey, do you have a second to talk? I'd love to talk to you about this. And to respect the fact, if they don't, then that's an opportunity for us to wish them a good day, and
right.
Yeah.
Let's see, I'm gonna hop in the YouTube chat real quick. Let's see, we've got people, Craig from Southern Illinois, Springfield, Missouri, Tulsa, Decatur, Ventura, California, College Park, Sherwood, Oregon, Riverside. You have a global or a nationwide audience, Jude. Oh, Southeast Asia, Singapore is in the house. That's pretty cool.
You also have a lot of people who would totally sign up for a virtual wheel building class, just so you know.
I know, I keep talking to Breadwinner about that. Like, hey, let's do, like, some kind of Patreon or something.
Yeah, for
along
sure.
those lines, but
yeah, I just heard about a class that somebody did here in Missoula this last weekend, where it was baking. So they baked bread. And it was an 8-hour Zoom class, and so it was like real time, right? and there was probably 100 some odd people that signed up all over the world to bake bread.
Yeah, and I think
I don't think I could bake bread though.
Well, but you could build wheels.
Oh,
if you wanted to, no pressure. I think one interesting thing as well is different brands are using Zoom to outreach directly with their end consumer, kind of beyond just broadcasting a message one way via Instagram or something. I've seen a number of brands where, like, I don't think I've ever seen them encourage two-way communication. Now they're hosting kind of Zoom meetups, and I think that's a positive change that we're seeing.
Oh, I know totally.
So any other questions in the Zoom chat? Just raise your virtual blue hand. Let's see. Cool. I know for us, like, we've been really trying to step up the live stream game. I mean, we've had the equipment and just trying to be more creative. Because it's hard not interacting with folks in real life. So
Yeah. Although I get zoomed out, like now I go from like some days, like 9 to 5, I'm on Zoom.
It's like a Zoom fatigue. It's going to be a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. That's true.
Absolutely.
Sweet. Well, we're coming up to the hour mark. If there's any last minute questions in the Zoom chat, let me know. Anything pressing in YouTube chats? Coffee or whiskey? Ask Adventure Biking. Currently tea for me. I don't know what's in your cup, Jude.
Oh, coffee.
Coffee.
Whiskey is dangerous this time. Whiskey is dangerous all the time, but like whiskey is dangerous this time of day. I still have a
Whiskey's a
few more
little
meetings
early.
to get through.
Yeah,
It is Friday though, so.
that's true. Yeah.
Is it? Yes.
Yeah.
Does that mean the same thing these days though? I don't know.
It doesn't mean the same thing. Yeah. I really just want to give a shout out to all of the small IBDs that are out there. I feel your struggle. I hear how hard it is. And I just encourage you to be your best selves right now, to be leaders, because we, like so many of us, are connecting more to that solo activity of riding a bike and running, but mostly riding a bike for me. And we need you. We really, really need you, and we need you to be there for us on the other end of things, and to just make clear how it is that we can support you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Well, on that note, I think we're going to wrap up this live stream. Thank you guys for joining us on Zoom, on YouTube chat. Thanks, Jude, for being an awesome guest. Looking forward to hearing more about the stuff you're going to be doing with QBP in the future. And if you guys like this content, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, consider supporting the channel on Patreon. We've got lots of interesting live streams coming up. We're going to do a live stream with Igor from Velo Orange. He's going to announce a new bike. I just got an email from Ultra Romance. He's going to join us on the coffee outside, and we're going to talk tires. Who else? Jay from Bags by Bird. He's going to give us a studio tour of where he makes his bike bags and answer the question about why bike bags are so expensive, but worth it. So we've got lots of pretty cool and interesting content coming up. So thanks again, and keep yourself upside down.
Hey, yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Can't wait to hug you in real life.
Yeah. Bye. Okay, stream has ended. Yay. Okay.